Welcome back to First Edition. Well, big changes are coming to education in New South Wales, where public schools will have to earn the freedom to make their own education and financial decisions. Now, for more on this, we're joined by the State Education Minister, Sarah Mitchell. Minister, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So can you elaborate on this detail and when it comes into place?
Good morning, Peter. So this is all about making sure that we're getting the best educational outcomes for our kids in our schools in New South Wales. We've had a policy in place since 2012 called Local Schools, Local Decisions, where we've been able to have principals have real direct responsibility over funding and programs in their schools. This is just about tweaking that, making sure that we're setting some good outcomes, some good criteria for our schools to work towards in terms of student results. And if we're not hitting the mark where we want to be in certain schools, this will give us the ability to come in, provide some more support and direction to make sure we see that lift.
So how will you be making those changes? Because as I understand it, when it was introduced in 2012, support staff had to be axed. So is that a consequence that you're trying to get rid of?
Yeah, look, there's some unintended consequences that we've seen over the 8 or so years of this policy. I want to bring back some more curriculum support and staff, certainly within the department, but also to be out there helping schools. And I think the increased administrative burden, you know, principals tell me they're now having to be business managers a little bit in terms of their budgets. They're dealing with some of the minor issues around maintenance when they want to be focused more on teaching and learning. So this is just about trying to address that balance, make sure that we've got some freedom. If schools are going well and their students are tracking successfully, we want to get out of their way. But if they need more support, we want to be able to provide that, particularly with the record funding that we've got going into education. We want that to translate into record results.
So how will you differentiate between the different schools? Because I assume that there would be a whole bunch of different markers.
Yeah, look, absolutely. So we'll work with our school principals and communities over the next few months to develop some of the criteria. We've already got some targets that we're rolling out to our schools this term through our Bump It Up program, and it looks at things like literacy, numeracy, attendance, the equity of different students depending on their background. As part of this, we'll look at things like HSC results. We might consider where their students finish at the end of Year 12 and who goes on to further study or training or employment. We'll work through that criteria with our main stakeholders so that we can get the balance right. But we also want to make sure that we measure growth, because if there's a school that maybe is from a tougher area but has extra support and does really well for their students, we need to tailor it, because I think what people might need at a school in the eastern suburbs of Sydney is very different to what they might need in Western New South Wales. So that's why we've got to work through this with our principals to get that balance right.
OK, Minister, just if I can change topics, coronavirus is well and truly on its march across Australia. We have had more cases overnight, particularly at an aged care facility here in New South Wales. What is the latest when it comes to schools?
So for us, we work really closely with New South Wales Health, and I'm also speaking quite regularly to Dan Tehan as the Federal Education Minister. We haven't had any students test positive in New South Wales, so we continue to monitor that. We provide advice to our school communities about what they need to do in terms of self-isolation for anyone who may have travelled from any of the countries that are on those lists. But look, this is an ongoing issue, and we are literally monitoring it hour by hour, day by day. We've cancelled overseas excursions for any of our schools, so we just have to make sure we're ready to respond, which we are, but we just need to see what eventuates.
You would be aware that in Italy and Japan as well, schools have basically been cancelled for a few weeks. Is that a live option here?
Look, if the pandemic plan comes into force and there is more action we need to take, we do have the mechanisms to be able to do that. Now, whether that's on a more localised level, whether that's more broadly across the state, it's just going to depend on how this situation evolves. But we are actively looking at ways that we can provide extra support, whether it's through online study, what modules we can do should that need eventuate. But we just don't know until we reach that point if we do at all.
And what would be that point? Is there a number of infected people, or is it if one person becomes infected at school, whether it be a teacher or whether it be a student?
Yeah, so it works on the advice from health. There's effectively a pandemic plan that we have, which relies on what health tell us and what we can implement in education. And there's basically stages of the way that we need to respond. So, like I said, it's just about watching and waiting at this point. I think that we're alert and aware of what possibilities may come in. If there's a particular case that affects a certain school, then obviously the focus would be on individual schools. If it becomes much more broader of an issue in the community, then we can go down that that path. But until we know, we really just have to keep monitoring it on a regular basis, which is what we're doing.
All right, New South Wales Education Minister Sarah Mitchell, thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Peter.